A single movement on the ice, and the encounter begins almost instantly. The polar bear is not only powerful, but remarkably persistent as a hunter. Once it aligns itself in the right position, the target is often forced into a critical test of survival. In the Arctic wild, even the slightest delay can change everything. So when that white giant truly makes its move, who can still slip away in time? The polar bear is the largest land predator still in existence. An adult can weigh around 1,000 pounds during peak energy storage. Its dense fur, insulating fat layer, and heat-absorbing skin allow it to withstand the harsh Arctic winds. Wide paws distribute its weight across thin ice, while also supporting long swims through frigid waters. Across that vast white realm, every step reveals a truth. Survival demands not only strength, but complete adaptation. At the edge of the frozen world, every calorie carries survival value, and even the Arctic's largest predator must compete to hold its advantage. The polar bear lives alone, without fixed territory, yet still competes around food sources and mating opportunities. When sea ice breaks up early, the window to hunt seals narrows, turning ice edges and leftover food sources into critical survival hotspots. Conflict begins when safe distance is broken. Two bears move in slowly, signaling through sound and body language, testing each other before deciding whether to press forward or step back. Many encounters end in pushing contests and endurance trials, because even a minor injury in this environment can carry a heavy cost. The one that yields often loses access to food or reproductive advantage. For a mother with cubs, the pressure is even greater. Females tend to avoid males, as cubs may be at risk if paths cross. When danger approaches, the goal is not to win, but to hold just long enough to guide the young away from risk. In that frozen realm, survival does not belong to the most aggressive, but to the one that endures the longest. Seals are one of the most important sources of survival for the polar bear. They carry a thick, energy-rich layer of fat, helping the Arctic predator maintain strength through long periods with little food. On the ice, seals may appear slow, but underwater, they are fast, flexible, and able to turn even a narrow crack into a safe escape route. At a breathing hole, the polar bear becomes almost like a silent shadow. With favorable wind, it can detect scent from about 20 miles away, lie low on the ice, and wait for more than 6 hours without moving. When the seal rises for air, The burst of action happens instantly. The bear lunges forward, driving its full weight onto a narrow point on the ice, turning hours of patience into a sudden, precise, close-range move. When seals rest on drifting ice, the polar bear's hunt becomes a test of distance and patience. The bear lowers its body, circles with the wind, and lets its translucent fur blend into the icy background. Its wide paws help each step land more softly on the snow. If the seal detects it too early, the chance disappears into the cold water. But if the distance is close enough, a short burst of speed can decide everything in seconds. Even then, success is never easy. The polar bear's seal hunting success rate is often below 20%. In the Arctic, survival belongs to the one that knows how to wait for the right moment. Along coastal ice fields, walruses represent one of the greatest challenges for the polar bear. An adult can weigh over 3,000 pounds, with tusks exceeding 3 feet and thick skin that reduces the impact of any collision. This is not a target for brute force, but a problem of strategy in a harsh environment. The polar bear rarely confronts a healthy adult walrus head-on. Instead, it watches the edges of the haul-out, where dense groups can become unstable when startled. Using the wind, it moves in quietly, then suddenly accelerates to apply pressure on the entire group. Within seconds, a chain reaction spreads. Massive bodies shift toward the water, the formation opens, and a younger, weaker, or slower individual may become separated from the group's protection. Even when an opportunity appears, the outcome is never certain. Walruses have weight, long tusks, and a clear advantage once they reach the water. If the timing is off, the polar bear must pull back to avoid wasting energy. But if it succeeds, the reward is a valuable source of fat, providing around 150,000 calories, a rare reserve of energy in a frozen world where every decision carries a physical cost. Under the pale light of the polar summer, the sea does not open into broad water, but is divided by ice into narrow breathing gaps. For beluga whales, these openings become lifelines when the ice closes in. An adult weighs under 3,000 pounds, protected by a fat layer up to about 5 inches thick. But when there are fewer places to surface for air, even intelligence and deep-diving ability have limits. Hidden behind the snow, the polar bear stays motionless like a rock. It does not pursue underwater, where the beluga is faster and more agile. Instead, it chooses a position near the breathing gap, reading the wind, the water's surface, and the faint movements beneath the ice. When the beluga surfaces, the bear drives its full weight onto the slippery ice edge, using powerful pulling strength to gain an advantage against the cold water. In tide-affected areas, water levels can shift by about 6 feet, constantly changing the distance between predator and prey. Many approaches may pass without result, but the polar bear keeps adjusting its position with patience and its ability to read the rhythm of the ocean. This encounter shows that success does not come from haste, but from patience and precise timing. In late summer, when seal-breathing holes disappear and familiar prey is nearly gone, every alternative food source becomes valuable. On land, the polar bear begins to rely on smaller opportunities to extend survival. In shallow streams just a few feet deep, salmon are forced to expose themselves as they surge upstream. The bear stands still for long periods, keeping its eyes on the water, then sweeps down at the exact moment the fish breaks the surface. The reward is far smaller than a seal, but it still provides protein and fat during a time of energy shortage. Higher along coastal cliffs, seabird eggs become another supplemental source. Research in the Arctic shows that polar bears are increasingly turning to bird nests in some regions as the ice season shortens, though this food is far less energy-rich than seal fat. At this stage, survival is no longer measured by a single major hunt. It is extended through patience, through small opportunities, and through the ability to endure until the ice returns. Across the wind-swept tundra, caribou emerge as resilient nomads of the north. During migrations that stretch hundreds to thousands of miles, they can reach bursts of speed up to 50 miles per hour across open ground. Their remarkable endurance and disciplined herd structure serve as a natural defense, allowing them to persist for millions of years against constant threats. Hunting caribou is not a typical choice. The polar bear's heavy build makes it difficult to sustain a long chase. Instead, it waits for a specific situation: a favorable wind, soft ground, shallow water edges, or an individual that is young, vulnerable, or slightly out of sync with the herd. When the opportunity appears, the polar bear launches forward, reaching speeds up to 25 miles per hour. The target is quickly approached and isolated. If an adult caribou is driven into muddy ground or still water, its speed advantage begins to fade. The bear's strength becomes a clear pressure. The encounter unfolds quickly, tense, then fades into drifting dust and cold wind. The reward for this adaptation is a valuable source of nutrition, helping the bear build thick fat reserves before the harsh winter returns. When the orca appears, the ocean is no longer an open space for prey. Each close approach reflects a strategy that amplifies peak strength. In orcas, hunting mastery lies in the ability to turn the entire pod into a unified force. In nature, this is a rare dominant position, where power is always paired with intelligence. So what makes the orca a presence that the entire ocean must approach with caution? Sea lions are marine mammals that live in groups, often gathering on rocky shores, sandy beaches, and coastal edges to rest, give birth, or care for their young. This behavior makes them more exposed than many other marine species. In Patagonia, orcas patrol quietly along the surfline, observing groups clustered close to shore. If a single individual remains too near the water's edge or reacts too slowly to retreat, the hunt shifts immediately into a decisive phase. The predator uses the force of incoming waves and its own momentum to surge partially onto the shore, concentrating all advantage into that brief moment. Everything unfolds quickly, yet without chaos. It is the result of precise calculation between distance, wave timing, and positioning. In orcas, strength never stands alone. It is always paired with the ability to read the terrain and coordinate with near-perfect precision. Dolphins are often described as the silver arrows of the ocean. Fast, agile, and capable of short bursts exceeding 20 miles per hour, they possess a level of maneuverability that few marine predators can match. Orcas and dolphins belong to the same family, but in the open ocean, shared ancestry does not determine survival. Strategy does. And in that regard, orcas take the encounter to an entirely different level. When a pod of dolphins is detected in the Pacific, orcas do not rush into a chaotic chase. Instead, the group divides into two purposeful directions. One group follows from behind, applying constant pressure that forces the dolphins to accelerate and change direction, gradually stretching their defensive formation. The other group positions itself ahead, closing off potential escape routes like an invisible net tightening across the surface. Within that mounting pressure, it takes only a single individual drifting away from the protective line for an opportunity to emerge. Orcas accelerate over short distances, approach with precision, and bring the pursuit to a close with minimal energy expenditure. This encounter shows that speed is never the ultimate advantage. Collective intelligence is what ultimately defines the outcome. Across the cold waters of the North Pacific, there are times when the rhythm of an orca family depends almost entirely on the silver flash of Chinook salmon. For resident orca groups, This is not only a preferred fish, but also a critical source of energy for their large bodies and long movements through cold seas. A hunt often begins in the quiet of deeper water. Orcas use sound to track their target, then patiently pressure a single fish to separate from the safety of the moving group. As the space narrows, the advantage begins to shift. A precise tail strike disrupts the swimming rhythm, generating a current strong enough to slow the target within moments. And for orcas, that is enough. The value of this technique extends beyond salmon. With stingrays, species equipped with a venomous spine up to 8 inches long on the tail, orcas maintain distance and deliver tail strikes with pressure reaching hundreds of pounds per square inch, creating water movement strong enough to disorient the target from afar. In this way, they control the situation without direct contact with the threat posed by the spine. The great white shark has long been regarded as one of the most powerful symbols of the ocean. An adult can reach about 20 feet in length and weigh around 4,500 pounds, equipped with a keen sense of smell, a streamlined body, and bursts of acceleration from deep water. In many cold regions, it once held a nearly absolute position at the top of the predatory hierarchy. But when the path of a great white intersects with an orca, the encounter is no longer defined by jaws or size alone. It becomes a test of collective strategy. From a distance, orcas use echolocation to detect their target, then quickly coordinate into a tight formation, gradually closing off escape routes toward open water. The encounter does not erupt instantly, but instead tightens through calculation and disciplined group behavior. Within that formation, the most experienced individual moves forward, selects the precise angle of approach, and initiates the decisive close pass. With a single precise action, the orca can turn the great white onto its back, placing it into a natural state of immobility. In that moment, the advantage no longer lies in individual strength, but in coordination, adaptability, and timing. From within that formation, the ocean reveals an enduring principle. Evolution favors those with the intelligence to act together. There are migration routes where every mile traveled becomes a test of survival. For the gray whale, it is a journey of more than 10,000 miles each year, from northern waters down to the warmer lagoons of Baja California and back again. Beside the mother, a newborn calf already weighs around 2,000 pounds, large enough to inspire awe, yet still far too young to face the early challenges on its own. When orcas appear, the rhythm of the migration immediately changes. The pod does not rush in chaotically, but instead takes turns applying pressure, testing responses and gradually wearing down the endurance of the mother-calf pair. Amid overlapping waves, the prolonged encirclement slowly stretches the protective advantage. Orcas wait patiently for the moment the defensive shield opens, then quickly tighten their formation. The focus remains on the calf, where the defense is most vulnerable. As the surface of the ocean settles once more, what remains is not only the trace of a pursuit, but also a reminder. Along the longest journeys, survival is shaped by both care and endurance. In polar regions, seals are an essential part of the ocean's rhythm of life. Many species share the ice edges, breathing holes, and patches of open water amid the prolonged cold. Among them, the Weddell seal is a typical target for orcas, not only because they often rest on low ice floes, but also because their thick layer of blubber makes them a highly valuable source of energy. When hunting this species, orcas use a technique known as wave washing, a display of peak collective intelligence. They approach the ice edge, observing the resting position of the target, the buoyancy of the flow, and possible escape routes. Then the pod accelerates in parallel formation, striking the water in unison to generate waves strong enough to destabilize the ice surface. If the target holds its position, the orcas continue to push the flow farther from safer areas, where the gap beneath the prey grows wider. Another wave follows, more precise and more forceful. The moment the seal loses balance and slips into the water, individuals waiting below immediately close in and complete the formation. Yet these encounters are not always just about a hunt. For orcas, they also serve as lessons on the ice, where the young observe, remember, and learn how coordination becomes a survival advantage. On fragile ice, the ocean tends to favor those who read the terrain best. And in orcas, experience is passed on like waves, from one generation to the next. Humpback whales are the great travelers of the ocean, reaching up to about 60 feet in length, weighing close to 80,000 pounds, and moving thousands of miles between warm breeding grounds and cold feeding areas. With their massive bodies and distinctive long pectoral fins, they rarely appear to be easily pressured. Yet orcas recognize that the most vulnerable point is not the mother, but the calf that must stay close at her side. In narrow channels or turbulent waters, the pod maintains formation, constantly shifting positions and gradually compressing the safe space around the mother and calf. There is no rush, only steadily increasing pressure guided by carefully calculated movements. The mother whale turns repeatedly, using her body to shield the calf and keep it within a brief protective range. But then a diagonal surge arrives at the precise moment, disrupting the defense in an instant. In this encounter, what stands out is not only strength, but the patience and timing that orcas bring to the vast ocean. The polar bear brings the hunt to a close through strength and enduring persistence. It remains a predator that forces its target to account for every slowed moment. In the Arctic wild, every step of survival is intensely demanding. If you want to see more of the most gripping hunts, like and subscribe to the channel. Across the vast white ice, only the most resilient endure to the very end.